to NatRevMD, a podcast where we share tips on optimizing medical billing and improving practice efficiency so you can have the business of your dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Signorelli, founder of NatRevMD. Let's get started. Welcome back to this week's episode of the NatRevMD Podcast. I am Dr. Heather Signorelli, and I am so excited to have with me Dr. Una from the EntreMD kingdom, I guess I would say. It's the world that really taught me everything I know about becoming an entrepreneur, starting our business, helping it grow. And I'm really excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad we get to catch up too. And really, I want to say thank you for what you do for physicians everywhere, because, you know, your work is so important, transforming private practices. And that's where doctors are kind of bleeding the most. So thank you.
Yeah. I think it's great, though, to see physicians in this entrepreneurial space. I actually got to meet with some yesterday that are doing some really cool things. And it's just becoming this web of physicians that are infiltrating everywhere in terms of owning businesses, taking control, having the life that they want. And I could not say enough good things about seeing this trend. So very excited.
I think like people talk about the challenges that we have in the healthcare space and all of that. But I think, yes, there are challenges, but I think it's also the greatest gift because it's forcing us to go from great clinician to great clinician and savvy entrepreneurs as well. And that's a match made in heaven when you have people who understand business, but at their core will always put people first. It's magical. So I can't wait to see it like fully unfold. It's really good.
Really good. Well, I'm excited to have you on today. Our listeners are physician entrepreneurs themselves. They're running practices. And, first for those who don't know, EntreMD, I'll let you explain kind of the premise behind it. But for us, for our business, we started NatRevMD, I guess it was January of 2022. We had no clients at the time. And I remember signing up for the EntreMD experience, and I'll call it an experience because it's the community, it's the coaching, it's all the things, the resources. And you sent this podcast. It was kind of the podcast that only the insiders got access to. And I remember binging that for days. I mean, it was like the only thing I listened to every spare moment of time. And before I had even started our time together, I literally already had our first client. I had made the money back, and just in listening, and then what we got out of the business program that you offer made our business grow hand multiples beyond what I could have ever even imagined. And so for the listeners out there, Dr. Una has truly been a mentor and somebody who's helped us succeed and helped me keep my sanity. So I'm excited to have you on today to talk about sanity, to talk about profitability, to talk about how we can help make it easier to be successful and do that together. So, share a little bit about you, your background, and just, kind of where you've come from.
Yeah, I'm a pediatrician by training. My very first business was my private practice, which I started in 2008. If you can imagine, it's been quite a while. And, that was my first encounter with entrepreneurship. And like every good physician, especially in that time, my philosophy was hang the shingle. And of course, they will come, right? Like do good medicine and the money will follow. And when I started my private practice, I hung the shingle and they didn't come. They didn't come at all. And that's when it first occurred to me that being a great clinician was not enough. Having great bedside manner was not enough. There are other things I needed to know. I did resist it for a little bit because I was a socially awkward, super shy introvert. So going after referral sources or speaking or social media, like none of that was going to happen because that just wasn't something that I did. But I'm very grateful. I did read a book by Brian Tracy called Eat That Frog, and he talked about all business skills being learnable. And I was like, that was the day that set me free because I said, I may not know how to hire. I may not know how to fire. I may not know how to market or sell or do any of that. I know how to learn though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we know that well. That doctor's check.
I'm a doctor. I know how to do that. And then so I started learning all those skills and realized every problem in business is not a true problem. It's just an area of ignorance. And if I can learn the skill that's required there, I can thrive there just like anybody else. And that was a turning point for me. And then in my private practice went from not having the patients, not having the clients, not having the referral sources to then building a 7-figure practice. I think we got to 7 figures in 3 years, which for a pediatric practice, that's 60% Medicaid. That's pretty crazy. And so we did that. And, I started learning early on about building my practice as a business entity, meaning that it can work without me. And so I started planning my retirement pretty early because I kind of had this feeling I have 9 lives to live at the same time. And, I'm going to have to make all these transitions. And so even in my 3rd year, I think I'd already hired somebody who worked 1 day a week. I could not imagine a physician's salary on my payroll, but at least I could have somebody work with me once a week. And that's how I started working my way out and building the systems and the team that could run the practice and all of that. And so practice, everything was good. Like 2016, this is, a number of years in, everything was great. But I did have this awareness that medicine as we know it is gone. This was in 2016. Medicine as we know it is gone. It has changed fundamentally. It's never going back to the way it used to be. And if I do not retool myself, I'm going to be out of luck. And so I didn't know anything about coaching or speaking, or I didn't know anything about that world. And so I started thinking, I was like, okay, if I cannot have the impact I have and create the revenue I create as a physician putting hands on patients, how else could I do that? Like, what are the other ways I could do that? I started thinking like, I need to have a practice that's successful. Maybe I could show other people how to do that. Maybe I could be a speaker, which was very funny as an introvert who couldn't be on stage for anything. Like, maybe I could be a speaker. Maybe I could be an author. I started thinking about these things and started exploring them. But then I also thought it's not going to be bad for just me. It's going to be bad for the entire physician community. There's 1 million physicians who are going to be out of luck. And that's really what set the stage for EntreMD. And in the beginning, it was all about convincing doctors like, listen, there's a storm coming and entrepreneurship is the way we get out of it. That was the starting point. Yeah. And, so started the podcast, started, being really prolific on social media, started doing events and workshops and masterclasses and things like that. And then it got to a point where people would start businesses, but like, oh, you can never replace your physician's salary with it. I'm like, what are you talking about? There are people like 1/10 of my education that are doing this stuff. Like, of course we can. And that's when I started pushing, like, no, you can build a 6-figure business, multiple 6-figure, 7-figure, multiple 7-figure. And that's when we launched the business school, the EntreMD business school, to kind of say, let's do it like we mean it. We learn the Krebs cycle. We can replace hearts. We can run successful businesses. And we started going all in on helping doctors make that transition to become these entrepreneurs who can build businesses that are profitable, that then give them the financial freedom and the time freedom. So they get to live life on their terms. They get to practice medicine on their terms. And the business school has been around for 4.5 years now. And it's been absolutely amazing to watch physicians go from employed physician to people who are running successful practices or who are successful coaches and speakers and all of that. And it's just been a magical, magical experience.
If you're enjoying listening to the NatRevMD podcast, please subscribe wherever you're listening to our podcast. Leave us a review because those are the things that help us get in front of more physicians. Thanks so much.
I feel like the ability to start a business, for me, I mean, obviously I'm still employed. I have my dual roles, my 2 lives that I live. But to me, it gives me more strength in my employed role because I have this creative, different thing that I do, not really on the side anymore. I mean, we've built this larger company now, but we have an amazing team and it's just this great group of individuals. And to me, it's like, it gives me like this other feeling of life. I don't know how to explain it. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean because you now have a creative outlet. You have something that you have autonomy over, right? Yes. So you're in charge and then you can explore your potential, which people don't really talk too much about that. But at the end of the day, the more of you're able to express, the happier you are.
Yeah.
Nobody really wants to follow yellow brick road. Nobody really wants to be in a container. Nobody wants to be a cookie cutter version of something. We want to be us. And business allows you to do that.
Yeah. And you get to like bring yourself and your part to your business. And you can't always do that, depending on the organization you work for. And so it is nice to be able to bring like your whole self, your whole being and everything you believe to something. It's been really fulfilling. And again, I credit your team to get us where we are today. But one of the, key things I want us to focus on today is, I think starting a business, obviously it takes the guts, it takes the inertia to just, okay, I'm going to do it. And then you get into that first year and you're like, why the hell did I do this? This is the hardest thing I've ever done. And you think you're like, shit, did I make a mistake? Should I not be doing this? And so I want to talk a little bit about those journeys and the ebbs and flows of a business so that you do get your time back, so that you do get that balance back. And so, maybe talk a little bit about how you've balanced and had boundaries within your own company, but also how you've helped support other practices to make sure that they don't end up just working 80, 90 plus hours a week. And now we're back where we started, where we're working like crazy and maybe not even getting the return on that. So talk to us a little bit about that.
You're like, let's just go for the messiest part of entrepreneurship possible. Let's just go there.
Yes, go there.
So I'm glad you did, because this is the reality. And I think when people don't understand this, they either never start businesses or they start and they can never win because the blueprint is just wrong, right? Now, in the beginning, when we start businesses, we don't know anything about anything. So starting a business is hard because there's a lot of personal evolution you need to go through, because in the beginning, you don't even identify as an entrepreneur. You know that we've celebrated people the first time they're like, I'm an entrepreneur. We're like, yes, you are. Now you finally embrace the identity. So even identifying with that, your hangups around talking about money, your hangups around, am I a greedy doctor if I want money? Like all of that is going to surface. So the internal work alone that you have to do is a lot of work. Now, clearly, I've started multiple businesses and I've helped people start multiple businesses. So this is something you can overcome. But if you don't recognize that it's work and it's work you need to do and it's work that will be maybe even a little scary and it will be hard, then you'll stop, right? But if you do it, you can win. And then the habits that it takes to make a business profitable, chances are you want nothing to do with them, right?
Yeah.
Things around marketing, building a brand, selling, talking about money, getting a lot of rejection, a lot, right? Because you're going to get enough yeses to get what you need. But on the road to those yeses, you're going to get multiples of no's. And to get to that point where you don't feel like it's a personal rejection, all of that takes time. So that's the second issue there. And then the third is that there's a lot of volume required, right? Dr. Signorelli, you know this in the beginning. So in the beginning, it's almost like you do a lot of work and you get a little result.
Yes.
The result doesn't match the effort. But the thing is, if you can do that long enough, it begins to switch where you start doing less work and you're getting more results because you hit the snowball. But if you do not stay on it long enough, you never get to the snowball. So I said all of that to say, in the beginning, it's kind of like a plane trying to take off. It uses so much gas. There's so much noise. There's so much shaking. There's all of that stuff. But if you can do it long enough, you will take off and then you get to cruising. But there's no way to cruising without that air. So it takes a lot. And what that means is you may work a little harder than you usually work. You may work a lot harder than you usually work. But if you do it knowing that I'm going to work like no one else now, so that I can live like no one else really soon, then you can take it. So Dr. Signorelli, when I started my private practice, and I didn't have the EntreMD business school, I could have done this better, but I didn't have the school then. When I started my practice, I did not qualify for a loan. I had not been in the United States long enough because I did my medical training in Nigeria. So I didn't have the credit and all of those things. And so I worked in the local urgent care of the university hospital by me, and I worked 20-hour weeks. I worked weekends. I worked all of that. And at the same time we started the practice, we started a church, which means I didn't have my weekends. My weekends were work days as well. And so there's a lot of nights and there's a lot of weekend work and all of those things. But I was always aware, if I can put in the right effort now, then I will get to a time where I will be in control of my finances, I will be in control of my time, and I will work as little or as much as I please. I did that for about 2 years. Nobody has to do that, but that's what I did.
Yeah.
But then I'm now in a place where I work how much I want to work. I have the bandwidth to homeschool my 4 kids. I can take as many vacations a year as I want. I'm in control. So that attitude is required. Now, having said that, some people get into that phase and stay there forever. That's a transition point. That's not a forever point. So your goal is, I'm going to do the work up front and I'm going to get to this place where I have financial freedom and time freedom. There are 2 things you must master if you will then get to that point. Number 1 is you have to learn the activities that move the levers. You have to understand the activities that move the levers. Otherwise, you're wasting your time doing so much and getting so little. So we know the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule, 20% of your activities create 80% of your result. I like to put it in another way. I like to say it this way, Dr. Signorelli, if you're going to add $1 million to your business in 2025, and there are 10 activities that will get you there, 2 of those activities will create 800,000. 8 of those activities will create 200,000. So the deal is this: I throw away the 8. Or I delegate the 8 and I live on the 2. And the thing about the 2 is that it's 2. It's 1/4 of the other activities. It's fewer things, but they're higher capacity. They're usually the things we'll procrastinate on the most. They're usually the things we don't want to do. But if we can learn to become these people who live in the 20%, you spend 80% of your time in the 20% activity, those 2 activities, then all of a sudden you have all this time because you're really doing only the things that matter. You've gotten rid of the fluff. You've gotten rid of the things that are time wasters and all of them. If that is not mastered, you can never control time. Never. This is the secret to controlling time. And the second thing is then delegation, yes, and different levels of delegation. Delegate things at home, delegate things at work, delegate not just the task, but delegate the thinking. There's a difference between telling somebody, buy all these things so that I can do my son's birthday party, and telling somebody else, plan the birthday party. They're 2 different things, right? So there's delegating the thinking, the mental, and delegating the whole thing, the outcome, and then just delegating the task. If you can learn to get results through people, if you can live in the 20%, you put yourself in a position where you'll be a master of time and you can have your time back.
I love that. I love leverage. I love delegation. And you think about leverage. I was listening to another podcast, and he's a billionaire. He started HubSpot, and he talked about leverage and how early on, right, you're trading your time for money. And then as you build skills, as you build a team, as you build all of these things, then you are able to have more leverage. And therefore that whole trading your time for money thing isn't quite the same anymore, right? It's not your only way to make income is not just about the time you put in, because you've built all of these other skills. You have this team who's helping you. And I do think delegation from a position standpoint is hard, right? Because we typically tend to be perfectionists. We tend to typically be control freaks, to sound, maybe I'm speaking internally, but I like things a certain way. But having now built a team who really, for the most part, runs our company day to day, they do a better job than me. They actually know a lot more about things than I do. I can put my spin on it and my touch and my physician experience, but I think when you build the right team, whether it's in a private practice or in your business school or your private practice, then things happen in a way that maybe you would have never even thought for them to happen because you've got such skilled people doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the truth. And I was a person who really struggled with delegation. I couldn't even see things I could get off my plate. I'm like, what do you mean? All the things I do, I'm the only person who can do them. This is never true. Okay. But anyway, and I would say, as a doctor, I do everything, but we never did though. Think about when you walk into a clinic. We say, I do everything, but you don't. You don't do the vitals. You don't do the billing. You don't check in the patient. You don't, there's so many things you don't do. We just bought into this thing that we're the only ones and we're the only ones who can do it. And, to your point, we have one perspective. Dr. Heather Signer, we work together, so you'll get this. I am a very logical person. It's interesting. It's a lot. I'm very, very, very logical. And I'm very focused on people's transformation. So for instance, when I host an event, the only thing on my mind is these people are going to come in on Thursday. They're going to leave on Saturday. What are the things I need to put in place so they come in one way, they leave a completely different way? That's all I'm thinking about. And so because of that, if I did an event, there will be no swag. Maybe the people will eat. Maybe they'll have break. Maybe because I don't think about those things, but that's a whole other part of the event that will be so transformational for people. Yeah. But I don't see that. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. The fun part of it, that I don't see any of that. So imagine an event I hosted by myself. I mean, you get transformed, but oh my goodness. I mean, yeah, result wise, but there's so many critical aspects that would be missing. There's so many things that have made it such an enriching experience that will be missing because my brain just doesn't go there. And it doesn't matter how good I get. I'm only going to become better at being me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to become better at being what somebody else who would have been on my team would be. You know what I mean? And so when we don't bring people on our teams, there are parts of our businesses that are missing. There's impact we could have that would be missing because the person who would do that is not there.
I love that. I mean, it is about the team. I look at our team and they are the reason we continue to succeed. I mean, and obviously we've had, thanks to you, had some hard lessons on hiring and firing, but that has gotten a lot easier. I will say with repetition, that does get a lot easier. And I've gotten a lot better at, picking strong candidates, but that is a take practice. I mean, when you think about team and you think about delegating, and obviously a lot of our listeners are small private practices, how do you balance the team growth and profitability? Because that does become a challenge, right? Because it's like you have to become just enough extra profitable to get that first partial person. And then, and so talk to us a little bit about how you have managed that.
I love your questions. I feel like we could do this all day. This is amazing. And this is a very important question, especially in private practice, because as physicians, we are led by what is good for the patient, which is the way we should be led. But it's like with no thought process as far as what this does for profitability. And you know that we have to have both. Like one is the leader, but it is 1 and 2. It's not 1 and 35. It's like number 1 patient, number 2 profit. It's like right next to it, because if we don't stay profitable, then we cannot continue to serve the patient, right? Like, so one of the best things we do for our patients is we stay profitable. So when it comes to hiring, I have seen many people hire a lot of people and then take a locum job to pay the bills of the practice, right? I've seen that a lot. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. And there's no shame in it, but there is a better way, right? And this is the way I look at it. The whole point of starting a practice is to serve people in a profitable way. That's the whole point. I want to serve my client, my patients, and I want to serve them in a profitable way so I can continue to serve them. That's the whole point. Now, sometimes there's a disconnect when we bring team members on. We're like, I'm bringing on this person because I want them to answer the phones. Or I'm bringing on this person because I want them to greet the patients. Or I'm bringing on this person because whatever the reason is. But they're there to support you in your mission to serve people and generate a profit. And once you disconnect it, then you have a team that is not bearing their weight, is not bringing any profit, so they become dead weight. So the only person who's bringing in revenue into the practice, the only person bearing the weight of the responsibility of bringing in revenue is the owner. That is heavy. That is so heavy. Now, when you start looking at every role as a profit center, and as a physician, some physicians might go like, oh my goodness, like they're people, they're not profits, but hear me out. Being profitable is a gift you give your patients. I've had patients tell me, thank you for staying independent. Thank you. I come to everywhere I go, I'm a number, except when I come here and I'm a person, because the place I'm coming to is run by a physician, right? And it's independent. So you're doing them a service when you stay profitable. Okay. If you look at every role as a profit center, it means that when somebody comes into your organization, you set up the role such that they are able to generate their salary, they're able to generate the overhead associated with their role, and they're able to generate a profit for the practice. Because if you do it that way, then it's not dead weight. You can hire as many people as you want to hire because you're bringing on every role in a profitable way. I'll give you examples. Let's say you have somebody coming in as your front desk. They may have a lot of different tasks they're doing, but one of the things they do is they're collecting copays, they're collecting deductibles, they're collecting old balances. Now, I want you to think about that. If you have somebody who is doing that, they're paying for themselves.
Correct.
Right? And so because of that, and they're generating a profit, they're generating the profit that'll pay for the next team member you're going to bring on. Then after the front desk, say you bring in an MA and you're like, okay, but an MA is just going to do all the vitals and all that. Well, if they do what they do, it will enable you to see more patients. So in that way, they're bringing in a profit. And if you put in one extra thing, and it could be as simple as everyone who comes in leaves with their next appointment scheduled, which means if you see 20 patients, then you may end up with 15 to 18 new appointments on your calendar. And so that MA is a profitable role, right?
I love that.
You bring in an office manager. An office manager has key metrics. If they're the office manager, that means you brought them on so you can stay in the role of an entrepreneur and they're doing the management, which means that your top objectives for the year. These are the number of patients. This is the turnaround time I want. This is what our AR aging report looks like. All of those things. They're responsible for maintaining those metrics. If you have someone who can maintain those metrics, you can afford an office manager all day, every day, and twice on Sunday, because that's a profit center. But we don't do that. We bring in someone to check in the patient. We send someone to do the vitals. We bring someone to manage the staff schedule. That's the office manager.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why we're stressed out, because they all cost money.
Right.
As opposed to generating money. And when we do it this way, then we take our payroll looks different. Our payroll goes from being an expense to being an investment with a clear ROI. Then you can hire all day, every day.
I love that. I mean, and it's true. I mean, some of the practices that have come over that we've helped the most, it's simple things of implementing those simple things to make their staff more useful. And front desk, man, there's so many golden nuggets we can just put at the front desk. And I know that sometimes that's the place of the most turnover, but there's so many tasks that they can do that are that revenue generating task that are not hard. They're just things you put on a checklist and you hold people accountable to. And if you can create a checklist and hold people accountable, I think that those two things can make any business work. I truly believe in a good checklist. So,
and that's the thing that we don't want to do. And the accountability piece. Oh, of course not. We don't want to hold people accountable. I'll tell you something. You'd be very amused by. I was at a conference speaking, and I said, you know what? I think we need to change the way we talk about our front desk, right? Because we say front desk, the girls in the front. You've heard this many times, the girls in the front, the girls in the front. Mm-hmm. And so I asked them, I said, okay, let's say you have a practice that brings in $3.75 million in revenue. Guess the only role that touched all $3.75 million.
Totally.
Because they checked the insurance, they collected the copay or not, they collected the deductible, they collected the old balances, and they touched every dollar. Technically. Yeah. I said, so what if instead of calling them the girls in front, we call them the directors of finance? Because it's true. That's who they are. That's literally who they are. Because if we know they touch every dollar, then that's not a role that we don't hold accountable. That's not a role we don't train. That's not a role we don't coach. We pay attention to them because they touch every dollar. And if they decide not to collect copays, not to collect deductibles, not to check insurances, they can bankrupt the practice.
We've seen it. It is we actually just did a practice success workshop yesterday with our clients. And all we talked about for the full hour was just eligibility, nothing else, just eligibility. Because again, it's the director of finance for the front desk who handle that role, but it is so many grand impacts downstream from a billing perspective and from a practice financial perspective that if you can just get this one piece right, and we're going to build on that over time, but it's critical. So you're right. So revenue generating activities for all of our staff members help to delegate, which then give you balance and boundaries and then time freedom. And then, like you said, you're now getting to do the things you want to do when you want to do it. And I do think, a lot of practices get stuck there and getting over that hurdle so that they can hire the next physician, so they can hire, whether it's a mid-level or somebody to help take the patient volume off, give them an opportunity to have a little bit more CEO time so that then they can be more successful at getting the things they want.
I'm glad we're having this conversation because it really is a shift. Because when you start a practice, it depends on the person, 6 months, year, 2 years, 3 years. There is a bit of a hustle to it, right? You're doing the work. You're a doer.
Yes.
And after being a doer, it becomes your default and you're really good at it and you can really monetize it. Like, you know what to do to pull the levers and, fix your practice and all of that stuff. But then there comes this time where you cannot grow until you change. So wherever you are, you're stuck. And you cannot run fast enough to get unstuck. You cannot see enough patients to get unstuck. Mm-hmm. It comes to that point where your role shifts from being a doer to being a leader of doers. Mm-hmm. It's a completely different skill set because now your role becomes more of hiring, building company culture, casting vision, holding people accountable, and all of those things. And it's harder.
It
in the beginning, so much harder than doing. And so you're like, you know what? I'll just do faster. I don't want to deal with this. I'll do faster. But you can't do fast enough to get out of that. Like, you're stuck. That's it. And people they're like, this is what I felt like. And this is what made me leave my job and create a practice, because I didn't want to live like this. I'm like, yeah. So you have burnout in your job, and that was awful. But now you have a custom burnouts that you created by yourself in your own practice. And that's really awful, right? Like, so how about we get you out of that?
And you can't blame anybody for that, right?
No,
because it's you, it's your show. But I think for me, one of the things that's been really helpful is being part of a business group like EntreMD, which helped me understand those skills, and also in what order. And I heard this. I love podcasts. It's what gets me straight. But this was also talked about how when we make mistakes as an entrepreneur, when we make mistakes in business, it isn't always just like an act of ignorance or an act of, not knowing what to do. It's sometimes the order in which we do things and making sure we're solving the problem that we actually have. And so this, to me, has been one of the fascinating things I think about the EntreMD school, is that you allow folks, or you give folks, the information in order to understand the order. And that's not always the same for everybody. It depends on the business, depends where you're at, depends what you're doing. But the order at which you solve problems matters almost as much about than just being the doer or getting in there and actually hustling and bustling. I don't know if you agree with that.
I agree 1,000%, because there's so much pain and suffering to be had when things are out of order. Like, for instance, when people would come into the business school and they're like, I want to start a practice in 3 months, and I quit my job 10 days ago. I'm like, but why? Why did we do this? Like, your business is not going to be busy. Not like, you're thinking you're going to have this newborn business, this newborn baby pay bills. Newborns don't pay bills.
No.
Right? Like, so you had this opportunity to self-fund your business, and I'm like, this is out of order. Or somebody who, has started a practice and they're so focused on all the big roles they want to hire, but they have no relationship with any referral source whatsoever. They don't have a brand, a presence. They don't have any patients looking to follow them, but they want to hire the office manager. And I'm like, but what are you going to, they have nothing to manage. Like, so this is backwards. Your number one assignment is to get all the patients you can get through the door. And then you know what I mean? Like, so there are sequences, or people come to me and they say, oh, Dr. Yun, I want to do exactly what you did. I want to exit my practice and all this stuff. I'm like, okay. Exiting your practice is a multi-year process. You don't wake up today, decide you're tired of clinical medicine, and exit. That's not the way this works, right? So you got to get to profitability. You got to build the team. Then you build a kind of team that can run it without you. Then you start experimenting with an exit, because all you have is a hypothesis. And so you walk away for 2 weeks and look at what breaks. It shows you what part of your systems need to be worked. You walk away for 4 weeks and you see what needs to break. You drop to 2 days a week, because you don't just get up and go. Like, that's not how this works, right?
Nobody's going to buy that. Nobody's going to buy that.
No. I'm like, you're the only person. And you're like, nobody wants that. But you can build something they want, but there's a sequence to it, right? Like, so you're absolutely right. Sometimes the result of someone who misunderstands the sequence and the result of the person who's totally ignorant is the same, because things were done out of order.
And I do think, having a group of individuals help you along with that journey has been crucial for us. It's been crucial for our success. And I, cannot think enough about, if an entrepreneur or physician who's listening is trying to figure out their next step, not having somebody to walk alongside with. I've been grateful that it has been your team, but I do think it's got to be you or somebody. It's just got to be somebody.
Yeah. I mean, so I didn't know the power of being in a community. I didn't know the power of mentorship, coaching when it came to entrepreneurship. I didn't know. When I started, I had no idea. And so that I discovered this right before I started EntreMD. And so this was 2017, and I have not stopped since. Because for me, it's the ultimate shortcut. Think about it, right? Like, so one thing I'm not very good at is picking up languages. Okay. I speak every language I speak with an accent. It's the funniest thing ever. I'm a native speaker of nothing. Okay. So if I went down the street to a place to go learn Spanish and I got one hour class a week, it would take me years. Mm-hmm. But if somebody dumped me in Spain and I had to be in Spain for 3 years, I would be extremely fluent because it's an immersion. The signs are in Spanish. The TV stuff is in Spanish. The menus are in Spanish. Everything's in Spanish. Everybody talks to me in Spanish because they cannot assume that I speak anything else. In the same way, when you want to become who you're not yet, you find a container where people are just that. And you put yourself in there. It is the fastest path to transformation. Fastest. So you just show up in a place where you're going to, we're physicians. I don't know if we can be entrepreneurs. And you see 100 people who are entrepreneurs. Oh, I'm a physician. Someone came into the business school and said, oh, I'm starting my practice. I heard that it takes 3 years to break even. I didn't even have to say anything. Everyone's like, oh, we're EBS. We don't do that. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't do that here. Okay. We don't do that here. You see that. You see people confidently speaking. You see people confidently selling. You see people cross the 7-figure mark, multiple 7-figure mark. You see them hiring high capacity team members. Like, it makes everything they're doing appear possible for you because of the proximity. And so in the beginning, I did one-on-one coaching for a year or so. And then after that, I was like, talking with me once a week might be amazing, but it's not enough. You need to be in a space where the things you think are impossible are things that people are just doing for fun. Like on a regular day, this is what they're doing. When somebody comes in and says, well, I want to share a win. We just had our first 7-figure month. Do you know what that does to your mind for you to hear that? It's like, hang on, here I am thinking I can't do 500,000 or 1 million in a year. And this person said they did it in a month. And you look at the person and you're like, this is a normal person. They have one head. What in the world, right?
In 1 month. I just want to focus on month that you said month.
1 month.
I'm just processing that.
1 month. And so being in that community is amazing. Having access to mentorship. And, for me, I'm a doer. When I say doer, I mean, I've done the private practice. I've done the business style business. I've done the agency style business. I've done the content-based business. And I have another one that's going to launch next year. But the idea is, it's not theory. I'm out there doing the thing and coming back and say, okay, guys, this is what works. This is what works in this order and all of those things. Having access to that is really priceless. So for me, when someone says, I want to start something, or I want to take, because I met people that are like, I'm doing 3 million in my practice, but I'm still working locum to pay my bills, right? Like you've seen that, right? So whatever version that is, if you're like, I'm ready to make a shift, I'm ready to build a business that has a lot of impact and gives me time freedom and gives me financial freedom, you got to put yourself in a container. Like if I had EBS when I started, I'd be in EBS. It didn't exist. But you got to put yourself in a container. That's the fastest way. It's the fastest way, especially for physicians, because it's almost, in some circles, it's a taboo to be an entrepreneur. You went to the dark side and all these things that people say. Yeah. You got to shift containers for sure.
I love that. Well, I know that one of the things that helps our listeners is hearing from other people who've done it, who've been successful, who have the life that you planned for and wanted. And you did the hard work. It's not that you've not done the hard work, but you've done it diligently and in an order that made sense for where you were going. And now you're there. And so for the listeners, if they want to hear more about your story, about your group, like where do they go find you?
Yeah, so you're listening to this on a podcast. We have the EntreMD Podcast, ENTREMD, and we just talk shop all day, every day on the podcast. So you definitely want to subscribe to that and just add it to your routine. Maybe something you do when you drive to work and all of that, but add it to your routine. Start that process of immersion. But if you're like, the next 12 months, I want to take my business to the next level. I want to create time freedom, financial freedom. I want to do it like I mean it. Then you can book a call with my team. It's EntreMD.com/call. They'll be happy to walk you through the different ways we can serve you and support you and help you on that journey, because that's what we do. That's what our mission is, to help 100,000 doctors build profitable multiple seven-figure businesses so they can live life and practice medicine on their terms. That's what we do.
I can't wait until you're saying the 8-figure. I think
I cannot wait.
You're so close. I just know it.
I can't wait.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I of course, I've always been a big fan of your team, and you have been a huge part of our success personally. So thanks for coming on and talking about, many different ways that folks can have that balance, can have the right team in place, can make sure that we're doing those revenue generating activities for everybody in the office so that you can get that time freedom. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for. We're not all here to work in 80 hours a week. We've got other things we want to live and experience. So appreciate you being on, and thank you so much. And for the listeners, we'll have all those links in the show notes.